Hi everyone, it's Gabriella Hoffman here. I wanted to post this video for you guys to get a little introductory to me and learn more about me if you already weren't familiar with my work. I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. I largely just wrote down the questions, that's all I know in regards to the questions. I did not have predetermined answers, so I'm going to be answering this as the video progresses. Now, the first question that you guys sent to me, and it goes like this. How old were you when you started working in politics? And what did you do to get involved in the beginning? I really like this question because so many people have asked me over the span of my decade in conservative politics how I got my start. I would say, formally speaking, I was first involved in high school a little bit. I was part of the Republican club leading up to the 2008 election, and I wasn't able to vote then. And a friend of mine at the time who was pretty politically active, and I had actually switched roles. He became less politically active and I in turn became more. But even beyond that, when I entered my freshman year of college at UC San Diego, I was really dead set on joining my campus newspaper, and I found the California Review, which is the conservative alternative paper on campus. And I was involved in that for the 3 years I spent at UCSD, starting off as a staff writer, then a business manager, then outreach director, and that was a lot of fun. That was how I got my first taste of campus journalism. Concurrently with my campus journalism, I was also an activist. I have since retired from political activism in 2016 when I started my business, but I had a Young Americans for Freedom chapter that was pretty vibrant. It was kind of a really good group to be involved with. I only had the club for a year, but in that year, I really did shake up my campus. We hosted David Horowitz, and in a famous exchange that he had with a Palestinian student, it went viral. And because of that event, which I actually single-handedly hosted through the help of Young America's Foundation, I was able to then catapult myself into an internship at the Reagan Ranch Center in Santa Barbara during summer 2010. I just made a video on that. I will link to that if you guys are interested to watch that. But starting out with the California Review, also my YAF chapter, then proceeding along to my internship at the Media Research Center, which really helped encapsulate my journalism career and helped me get a taste of it there. And then I went on to work for Leadership Institute, where I spent 4 years as a Northeast Regional Field Coordinator and guest lecturer. And from there, it's just been really exciting. I'm currently writing, I'm doing my own consulting business, and making these YouTube videos for you all. The next question I have for you guys is this. What was the first article you ever wrote for a publication, and how did you get the story? I think the really first breakout article I had was in Town Hall in March of 2013 when I wrote about the resurgence of Stalinist policies in Russia and how neo-Sovietism is quite alive and well in Russia today. And I wrote about that because no one was talking about it. It's something that is personal to me, Russian aggression, because my family's from Eastern Europe, from Lithuania, the first country that formally broke away from the Soviet Union. And American media wasn't really covering this poll, and I latched onto it and ran with it and did my best to examine the full scope of it. And from there, that kind of just catapulted my writing career. As you were growing up, when did you learn of Rush Limbaugh? Have you read his books as well as his children's books? Very interesting question. Believe it or not, I guess you could consider me as a Rush baby, as it's called. My dad has actually been listening to his radio program for the better part of 30-something years. My dad tells me all the time that he first listened to his radio program when he first got his start about 30-something years ago. So when he turned on the radio, heard his voice, and heard what he was saying, he liked a lot of his thoughts, his discussions, his monologues, and I have kind of been plugged into Rush Limbaugh's musings for as long as I can remember. And I actually know his brother, David Limbaugh, fairly well. I've met him in the past. He's a really nice man. I've been featured on the Rush Limbaugh show once when I was interviewed by FoxNews.com. And last fall, when Mark Stein guest hosted the program, I came on the program for like 15 minutes to discuss my findings on why Virginia recently flipped from Republican to Democrat and the factors explaining that. So I'm pretty familiar with Rush Limbaugh. I know some people may not have a favorable view of him, but among conservatives, he actually really did give a voice to conservative media. Talk radio, if you aren't aware, really did give conservative thought leaders and conservative ideals a lifeline in the media scope, because everything was dominated by other media outlets. There wasn't really a conservative media conglomerate, and with him coming to the scene and popularizing talk radio, that really did give conservative media prominence. And I have read his books. I read one of his Rush Revere books, and those are really good for kids if you're wanting to learn about the founding, timeless conservative principles, constitutional ideals. So I know some people may have mixed views. They may not like Rush Limbaugh, but I have known about him for most of my my life, and my dad's a big fan, has listened to him, and I've had the pleasure of being featured on his program and coming on as a guest. Completely inappropriate question, but what's your favorite cut of steak? It is never inappropriate to talk about meat. And when I do eat steak, I do like eating filet mignon. When I have it on the raw side, it unsettles my stomach and is too tough for me to chew. Don't hold it against me. My family's from Eastern Europe where meat was in short supply, so give me a pass with me liking my filet mignon a little bit more on the well done side. What are the pros and cons of entrepreneurship? This is a very interesting question, especially in this day and age, and especially as our economy is kind of in this ambiguous place with the coronavirus. But having launched my business about 4 years ago, I can really speak to this, to the benefits and to the negatives associated with running your own business. And I'm a sole proprietor. I'm what you call a freelancer. I'm not latched onto one employer. I actually have a Rolodex of clients. I have a handful of clients that I work with, smaller contracts, larger contracts, and the sort. And going into my business endeavors, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. My dad is a business owner. He runs a construction business. My uncle had a repair business for several decades himself. So I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. And my family always told me that when you go on your own, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a while for you to find your footing, to accrue a really nice Rolodex of clients who are going to pay you well, treat you well, and have mutually respectful relationships with. And when I first started in summer of 2016, I didn't really have a direction. So I had to really learn the ropes. I had to learn how to create a contract. I had to expect lower dollar clients. I had to expect rejections for client proposals. I had to kind of build up my contact list again. Even though I had a lot of contacts with my previous job, a lot of people don't really trust you when you're on your own. So some of the cons associated with it is you're not going to make money right away. You're going to have to prove yourself to people time and time again. It's a lot of hard work. You're going to have to work sometimes beyond the 9-to-5 schedule. You're going to have to endure good clients, bad clients, really kind of meager pay in the beginning. But once you find your stream of things, you find your beat, you kind of develop equilibrium when it comes to your business repertoire. It really does have high dividends and it pays off exceedingly well. You have to learn how to have a balance, and success doesn't come overnight. But I wouldn't trade this experience for anything else. I have loved being a business owner, a solopreneur as they're called, and really just helping clients succeed and not just using my position as a consultant to get media appearances, because so many people fall into this trap when they go into consulting, especially in media and communications, of using it as a launching pad to get TV hits, to get bookings, to become famous. So I've tried to have a balance with that, but I hope that answers the question as to what the pros and cons are. What's your favorite game fish and favorite technique for catching it? Now, when I go fishing, I like to target any species. I'm an equal opportunity angler, as I like to say. Some of my favorite game species of late have been the striper bass here in the Chesapeake region, and I like catching that on light tackle. That type of method of catching striped bass is actually really fascinating. You feel the tug of your line really well. It's very well pronounced, and the fish puts up a great fight. So I would say of late, in terms of a game fish, that has been my favorite species to target, and I really like the light tackle setup I use there. Do you have any tips for navigating internships? I'm a parent of almost college-bound teens, and am curious about your perspective take on this. Now, with the job market being upended and a lot of kids finishing high school and then moving on to college, there's a lot of uncertainty about whether or not you can successfully do an internship. And I want to address this as clearly as possible, or answer this to the best of my ability, and give you some clarity on this and what to expect in terms of the reality of internships. with everything moving remotely or online, not in office, things can be a little challenging with securing an internship, but it's not impossible. Depending upon what your child wants to go into, what line of work, the industry, etc., it is not impossible to navigate and secure an internship, even in this confusing age in the job market. And as we're seeing the economy start to pick up, yes, the economy is picking up despite kind of what you hear on the news. I think more internships and similar work experiences are going to be available for graduating high school seniors, emerging college freshmen. And when I first did my internship experiences a decade ago, I actually did several internships remotely. So for the last decade or so, even with this restructuring of the economy, with everything kind of moving towards a gig worker economy or more remote-based work, we saw a lot of remote internships start to come about in the last decade, but now we see this especially with just the job market being upended. And I will say to your child that they shouldn't lose hope. Depending upon what they're passionate about, they can see what is out there. You could look on LinkedIn, you could look on jobs.com. If they're interested in politics, depending upon where they incline themselves politically, you can look in your state, local, or federal races to see what campaigns are hiring. A lot of campaigns, with it being 2020, are looking for more staffers, and they sometimes do pay well, so they have paid internships. A lot of the times you're also going to have to be telling your child, son or daughter, that they have to work unpaid internships. I did my fair share of paid and unpaid internships, and that's a reality. And even with unpaid internships, especially those that are remote, you're going to learn a lot, and you should tell them that they can take away from that experience and develop a skill set from that as well. But I say research, see what is available, tell them to not get detoured, tell them to put feelers out there, to put out applications, and to possibly even create their own type of internship. It's very possible to do a hybrid of things. Are you a bird watcher, as the term is used, not just I like to look at birds? It would seem you enjoy it. I would like to think that I am somewhat of a birder. I'm not an expert birder by any means, but I have enjoyed photographing them. I went to the Conowingo Dam in Maryland in the Susquehanna River area, which borders Maryland and Pennsylvania. And I really loved seeing bald eagles there because it's known as a hot spot for bald eagles on the East Coast. I've enjoyed admiring birds here in my backyard during the height of COVID. And actually bird watching is more popular in terms of participation, even more so than hunting and fishing. So anytime I have downtime and it's not hunting season or fishing season, I do like to enjoy bird watching. How did you set an initial rate for your services as a freelancer consultant? That was really tough for me when I was a freelance writer. I don't think I was ever comfortable with the rate I set. Without divulging so much on what I charge, because I like to keep a little secrecy on them and kind of maintain client consultant privilege with that respect. But when I first began to determine the payment structure for my business, I had to start on the lower end. I would say that you sometimes have to settle for a few $100s when you start out your business. But as you start to accrue media hits, listings, articles, and start to gain more traction, you could start to charge more. And once you become comfortable and you've accrued media mentions and hits for your writing, then you can begin to charge more. A lot of companies will say sometimes you undersell yourself, or maybe you're overselling yourself. So if you want to know exactly how to go about your pricing for your articles, you should consult your editors if you're working for a publication. You should talk to experienced outdoor writers. I'm an award-winning outdoor writer if you guys don't know already. If you know me and you have questions and you're wanting to get kind of familiarity with that payment structure more, I'm happy to answer the question offline in terms of how you can go about structuring payment for your articles. But if you're just starting out, do not think you're qualified enough to charge hundreds and thousands of dollars. You're gonna have to start small. And sometimes you're gonna have to work for free and then move your way up on the payment ladder. But as you start to gain experience and get mentioned and placed in a lot of more prominent publications, then you can begin to start to charge. What have you done to position yourself for success at a young age, self-employed in a tough market, politics, conservation, outdoors? Like not just from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. Did you budget every penny, eat ramen, make hard decisions about clients' time and social stuff? I do a lot of stuff, and sometimes my friends tell me I'm very overextended. Other people tell me that it's really good that I am busy and I'm focused and I haven't delved into distractions that kind of have taken me off course. And what really was the impetus behind this, how I'm so structured in my work, is I would say it helps to have a foundation. So I was raised to be well-read, focused, go-getter. When you're a child of immigrants from the Soviet Union or from Eastern Europe, you come from a family of go-getters and motivators and people who don't settle. I was taught from a young age to have a strong work ethic, to never settle, to always know my worth, and to pursue things on my own. I never had anything handed to me on a silver platter. My parents worked their way up to attain the American dream, so I learned from them that you have to work your way from the bottom to essentially get to the top, never to have anything handed to you, never to expect anything from you. My parents also taught me to learn from my failures, to learn from any project that never materialized, and to take that experience and change my repertoire, to change maybe how I oriented my business. Or when it came to, let's say, writing, anytime I had an article rejected, I haven't had too many articles rejected, luckily, but I've had some articles rejected from sources like the Washington Post. I really wanted to have a column there, and when they didn't accept it, I wasn't deterred. I just pitched it to different places. Having a strong work ethic and just being focused on things, staying busy, working on a podcast, being busy with writing, client work, spending time outdoors has really helped me be on the path to success over the last decade or so. Do you set goals, targets? What is your methodology for identifying new opportunities? Like, what's your filter? When I identify a new opportunity, whether it is through my freelance writing endeavors or through my consulting endeavors, I like to encourage people to send me leads. Now I don't really have to advertise for or solicit leads much. I have people now who are familiar with my work, who've seen my case studies, connect people to me who think would be a good fit in terms of working together, collaborating. So I used to have to solicit for client leads, but now I have people thinking kind of in my best interest and sending people my way. So I think that's one way. And how I set goals, I don't use an app. I don't use some metrics in terms of setting goals, but I try to write down things when I want to accomplish things. I don't really set benchmarks on 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years because things can happen. Obviously, all of us were thrown with a curveball with this coronavirus. So I try not to go off of, let's say, arbitrary deadlines or benchmarks, but I try to set reasonable goals and expectations and kind of conduct myself in that manner. When Kindle came out and Apple Books after it, did you immediately warm to ebooks, or did it take a while after having just printed books for so long? Thanks. Perhaps I'm a traditionalist when it comes to ebooks versus printed binded books, but I don't really read much of ebooks. I like the feel of a book. I love the texture of hardcover books or paperback books. I love turning pages on books, and I haven't really been convinced to incline myself to ebooks. I don't shy away from digital books because I read articles online, and in college I was used to reading texts online. I hated reading from online sources, but I do today for article research, for learning about things, for reading interesting subjects, but I am team traditional book. Those were some wonderful questions, and I hope I did my best to sufficiently answer them as best as I could. Bye, everyone.